Lovecraft Country Episode 1 starts off with our main character, Atticus Freeman, battling in black and white Korean war footage. Atticus is played by Jonathan Majors, who you may have seen in Netflix' The Five Bloods. The scene transitions from black and white into color as a bomb is dropped over the war-torn landscape. We see aliens, monsters, UFOs, and some kind of red woman descend from the sky to give Atticus a cryptic message before Cthulhu, a giant squid-like alien monster, appears. This monster is one of H.P. Lovecraft's most iconic fictional creations. South Park fans may remember him from the Coon and Friends arc when he teamed up with Eric Cartman. Before Cthulhu can strike, Atticus is saved by Jackie Robinson, and with the swing of his baseball bat slices him in half. He tells Atticus, "I got you, kid," before Cthulhu reassembles himself, and a final swing of Jackie Robinson's bat suddenly wakes Atticus from his sleep. Yes, it was all just a dream. Atticus is really on a bus traveling from Florida towards his hometown of Chicago. This is a period piece set in the 1950s, where Jim Crow is very much the law of the land. Not only is Atticus and another black passenger forced to sit in the back, but when the bus suddenly breaks down, all of the white passengers are provided with alternate transportation while the black people have to fend for themselves. This is where we get some exposition as Atticus explains his love of sci-fi and horror books, despite the racist authors and characters. The main character in the book he's reading was a former Confederate soldier, and H.P. Lovecraft himself was a known racist. Atticus excuses his love of these stories with our first gem of the episode. Stories are like people. Loving them doesn't make them perfect. You just try and cherish them and overlook their flaws. We also learn in this scene that Atticus joined the army to get away from his father. And he is also the reason Atticus is heading back home to Southside Chicago. Montrose Freeman, Atticus's dad, has gone missing. We make it to Chicago where we're introduced to Atticus's Uncle George, his wife Hippolyta, and his daughter Diane, or Dee for short. Uncle George is played by Courtney B. Vance, Angela Bassett's husband. You may remember him playing Johnny Cochran in The People vs. O.J. Together, Uncle George and his wife publish the Safe Negro Travel Guide. If you've ever seen the movie Green Book, it's the same idea. George researches and travels the country to find establishments that are safe for Negroes to visit when they travel. His wife wants to accompany George on his next trip, but he's scared of what could happen to her on the road. On his last trip, George was attacked by racists and both his kneecaps were shattered. In this scene, we get our first glimpse of Atticus's dad, Montrose, on the photo wall. It's none other than Omar from The Wire. He's been missing for 2 weeks and sent Atticus a strange letter about his deceased mother and her mysterious ancestry. Apparently, Atticus has a secret lineage that his father went to investigate in Ardham, Massachusetts. This is known as Lovecraft Country, where H.P. Lovecraft based many of his stories. What makes this so strange to Atticus is that his father often physically and verbally abused him for reading Lovecraft stories. Montrose made Atticus memorize On the Creation of Niggers, a real poem that H.P. Lovecraft wrote. So for Montrose to disappear in Lovecraft Country is more than strange. Uncle George agrees to accompany Atticus on his search to find his father in his trusty car, Woody. Next, we're introduced to Leticia Lewis and her half-sister Ruby. Letty is played by Journey Smollett Bell. You remember her from Eve's Bayou or as Michelle's best friend on Full House. She was also in the Birds of Prey movie, but no one watched that. There's some tension between her and Ruby because Letty skipped their mother's funeral. Ruby agrees to let Letty stay with her for 2 nights and no more. Ruby is played by Wunmi Masaku, who starred in Batman vs. Superman. Letty was the only girl in the sci-fi club when Atticus was a kid, and it's pretty obvious they're both attracted to each other. She ends up going with Atticus and George on their trip to Devon County, Massachusetts to find Montrose. She plans to stay with her brother near Boston instead of with Ruby. The road trip begins set to the sounds of James Baldwin. We get another deep question. Is the American dream at the expense of the American Negro? Uncle George gets a tip about a Negro-friendly diner in Simmonsville, New York, a few hours away from Albany. Most depictions of Jim Crow are usually in the South, so it's interesting to see the racism in the Northeast explored. They aren't greeted with the friendly welcome you'd expect from a diner worthy of the Negro Travel Guide. Atticus notices the white paint and it immediately raises a red flag. He's reminded that the White House was painted white because of the War of 1812. Soon, Letty, who did her own investigating, comes rushing out And before we know it, the three of them are in a race for their lives in Woody, with the Simmonsville lynch mob close behind. Uncle George had to get some candy before he left, though. Letty is driving her ass off, but the racist won't let up. Her name is not Girl. It's Leticia fucking Lewis. Then out of nowhere, we see a fancy silver car cut off the racists and cause them to crash. Letty, Uncle George, and Atticus are saved. But who is the mysterious white woman that intervened? The trio arrive at Letty's brother's house and try to laugh off what just occurred, but they don't stay there long. Letty's brother is also mad at her for skipping their mother's funeral. Letty clearly has some unresolved issues with her dead mother. After a huge fight, she decides to continue on the journey to find Montrose with them. They're circling the same area in Devon County for hours. Atticus, frustrated by the lack of progress, stops to take a look and see if there's a hidden road when the infamous Sheriff Hunt pulls up. Letty's brother informed Uncle George of Sheriff Hunt and all the complaints about him from the NAACP. So the three are careful not to provoke him. The sheriff lets them know that they're in a sundown county, which basically means he has the right to arrest and execute them without any probable cause. They play a sick game of cat and mouse where Hunt makes them drive the speed limit out of town before the sun sets, only to have officers intercept them once they've escaped. Tick, Letty, and Uncle George are dragged into the woods and are about to be executed on a flimsy accusation, when all of a sudden we get our first real-life monster. Sheriff Hunt is viciously maimed by the monsters as Letty, Tick, and surviving officers run for their lives. Uncle George falls down with his bad knees, armed with only a flashlight to protect him. Suddenly, the racist cops and our main characters are on the same side, trying to survive whatever is attacking them outside. Eventually, Uncle George makes it into the cabin, and they realize that the lights from the car and the flares in the trunk may be their best chance of survival. They send Letty out racing to the car while one of the cops begins transforming into one of those monsters himself. The officers had no hesitation to kill these three innocent black people, but this snarling monster he refuses to shoot. Just in time, Letty crashes through the cabin with Woody and takes out the monster, but there are more in the woods approaching them. When all hope seems lost, they're saved at the last second by a mysterious whistling noise, almost as if somebody was calling them off. They're saved, but Woody is destroyed, and they're forced to walk the rest of the way, not unlike when the bus broke down in the beginning. Poor Uncle George and his bad knees. They arrive in Artem and approach a huge mansion, tired and covered in blood, when they see the same car that saved them back in Simmonsville. As they approach the door, a creepy-looking white dude opens it for them. He's been expecting Atticus, and that's where the episode ends. Now let's answer some of the lingering questions from this episode. Yes, everything that just happened was real. Those were real monsters that attacked them, not some dream like the opening war sequence. No, the monsters don't only eat racists. That would be very Jordan Peele. But it seems like the monsters are controlled by someone else. We see a picture in Uncle George's wallet of a mysterious lady that isn't his wife. No, Uncle George isn't trifling. That is a picture of Atticus's mom. Something is definitely going on that Tick isn't aware of regarding his mother's relationship with Uncle George. We get a scene of Atticus calling South Korea. He has a relationship with some woman there who warned him not to come back home. Astronomy is casually placed in the background. We see Diane and Hippolyta both use a telescope. And who are the mysterious white saviors? Well, we don't know exactly, but they must have something to do with Atticus and his lineage. He says, "Welcome home," at the end. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We'll be doing episode breakdowns all season long. This channel is known as the Chitlin Circuit, where we celebrate Black films and TV. We'll have some original content coming soon, including Blackity Black movie trailers. We do parodies of all the Black movies honest trailers won't do. Episode 1 is Belly, so be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss out. We also have our answer to Zach Morris's trash. This show is called Martin Payne is a Fuckboy, where we recap Martin episodes and you tell us in the comments if Martin is displaying fuckboy behavior. Thanks for watching, and if there's any Lovecraft Country questions we didn't get to, make sure to leave them in the comments below.